Hi, I'm Stephanie Jaworski of joybaking.com. Today we're going to make Blitz puff pastry, also known as quick puff pastry. Now this is a lot easier to make than your classic puff, but yet I find the results every bit as good. So it's great for both sweet and savory things like galettes. Here we have an apple galette, turnovers, and also the ham and egg pie recipe on the joybaking.com website. You can also use it to make cheese straws, or even I've made it for Napoleons. So if you have an electric stand mixer like I have here, use your paddle attachment, or you could make it by hand, but it's really easy if you have a stand mixer. So the first thing you will need is 2 1/3 cups, which is 305 grams of all-purpose flour. You may know that as plain flour. Put that in there. And then you will need 1½ teaspoons, 6 grams of kosher salt. And then I like to add 1 teaspoon, 3 grams of dry malt diastatic powder. And the reason I use that is it aids in browning your puff pastry. You can buy it a lot of online sources. Now, if you don't have it at home and you don't want to buy it, you could just leave it out. So now what I'm going to do is just mix these ingredients together on low speed. Okay, and then, as we all know, puff pastry is about butter. Now what I like about this, your Blitz puff pastry, as opposed to your classic, you can just use regular unsalted butter. You don't have to use the higher fat type. So you will need 1 cup, which is 225 grams of cold unsalted butter. And then you want to cut it into these large chunks. So what I like to do, because you want to make sure every chunk is really nice and cold, is I take my butter out, I cut it into chunks, and I put it on a plate like I did this, cover it, and put it back. You know, if you think about it, like a half hour before, put it in your fridge, or you could just even put it in your freezer for a few minutes to get it nice and cold. So, now, what we're going to do is mix this on low speed, not for very long, maybe a minute or 2 minutes. What we want to do is you want the butter to still be about marble size, but you want the mixture to be, when you feel it, it's quite grainy. If you are doing it by hand, what you want to do is kind of shear the butter through the palm. I use the palm of my hands, like so, but if you have the stand mixer, like I said, low speed, you know, it's only going to take about a minute. Okay, so let's see this. See, my butter is still in really large chunks, which is what you want, but it's kind of grainy, the flour, so that's what you're looking for. So now we are going to add 1/2 teaspoon, 3 grams of lemon juice. The lemon juice is going to tenderize our puff. And the other thing is, if you store your puff in the refrigerator for, like, you can store it for 2-3 days, sometimes it can have the tendency to turn a little gray, and the lemon juice helps to prevent that. I mean, it's still good, but you know, it doesn't look as good, so the lemon juice will help get rid of that. And then you will need up to 1/2 cup, which is 120 milliliters, 120 grams of ice cold water. I've taken my water from the refrigerator, so it's really cold. It's always important to keep your puff pastry dough cold. Now, I'm not going to add all of my water at once, because you never know how much water your flour is going to absorb. Now we are going to mix this on low speed, and what we're looking for is it's going to get kind of shaggy, the dough. It's not going to get, you don't want like a solid ball of dough. It's going to be kind of shaggy, and when you feel it, it's kind of dry, but it will hold together. And this won't take very long. Okay, so once you see that most of the flour is moistened, that's it. You don't want to really mix this very long. As you can see, it's very, take it off here. It's very shaggy looking. But yet, when I go like this, it holds together. So that's what we're looking for. Now, this, once you make your dough, what we're going to do is the same thing you would do with the classic. It's the rolling, folding thing, chilling. That process is the same because we got to start building some layers. And that's what gives us that nice flaky, you have all the layers of flaky pastry. So patience is needed. It's not a lot of work, but it takes a little time because we do have to chill it a bit. So let's clear a space. You will need to flour your counter and your rolling pin and your dough. It's important to keep everything cold. If at any time your dough starts to get soft or you see the butter starting to get too soft, and your dough's sticky, then stop and go and put it into the refrigerator. So I'm just going to gather this up and dump it on here. Because keeping this cold is really important. I can't stress it enough. So don't rush it. So I'm just going to kind of put it into a ball. My hands are cold, which is good. The kitchen's cold, the counter's cold. If you found your dough's a little warm, even at this point, just wrap it up and put it in the fridge for a half an hour. So I'm just going to press down. Now, if you have like some kind of like a flat edge scraper, this is really good. Now, what we're going to do, and we're going to roll this way, is you want your dough to be 3 times the length of the width. So I usually have about 6 to 7 inches wide, which is about 15 to 17. So therefore, my length is going to be somewhere like 18 inches to 21 inches. Centimeters, that would be 45 to 51. So you will need a ruler. Or if you've made this a lot, then, so I'm just going to press down. That makes it a little easier. And then, like I said, you want to keep your sides pretty even. So a scraper is good. Don't roll like over the edge. Kind of roll up to the edge. Because then that way, if you keep rolling like right off, you could roll the butter, in which you don't want to do that. So I just use this to kind of gather it up, and then always check the underside, move it around. If it's sticking, add more flour. If it's really sticky, then, you should put it, chill it in the refrigerator. But ours is pretty good right at this point. Okay, so I'm going to measure it. Run your hand gently over that and see, make sure it's even thickness. So I'm about 6. So, yeah, it's about right. So now what we want to do, I don't know whether you can see this, but there's really a lot of visible chunks of butter, and that's what you want. So now we're going to fold this up like you would a letter. So if you have one of these flat edges, this is good. So we're going to, I'm just going to get if you have a lot of flour, just brush it off. You have a little dough. This is going to be a little rough. If it falls apart on this one, don't worry. That's very normal. So I'm going to put that, and then now you want to make sure, So that's a little, back this off just a little. It's about right. So now, just square up your puff. You want to make sure your edges are all straight like so. And then, my dough is starting to get soft, so we need to chill it. Probably between, it depends how soft it is, 30 to 60 minutes. Because we will have to do up to 4 to 5 turns like we just did. This is called our first turn. So what I'm going to do is just transfer that to plastic, wrap it up, and then what I do is I take a Sharpie and then I put on here the time, and I just put a 1 to say that's my first turn. Just in case you were doing something else and then you kind of start after a while to, how many turns did I do? So if you do that every time, you'll remind yourself. So I'm going to put this into the refrigerator for about, like I said, 30 to 60 minutes. That way the flour will, and the gluten will relax, the butter will get cold again, and then when we come back, we will work on our second turn. So now it's been a little more than half an hour, so we're ready to go. It's nice and cold. Again, flour your counter. And in between our rolls and folds, always make sure to clean the surface, because sometimes you get little pieces of dough and we don't want those to pass on to our next time we roll. So now, again, the same thing as last time. We're going to roll this way 3 times the length of 3 times the width of our dough. Now you want this part on your left side, it's kind of like a book. Always have it that way. And I kind of like to just bang, kind of helps soften it a little, make it easier. Again, always move your dough around. You don't want it to stick. And, constantly kind of sticking, put a little more flour. As you're rolling, straighten up your edges. Okay. As you probably noticed, even this second time, it's a little easier to roll. It's not falling apart. So straighten up my edges. And then I'm about 7 inches, so 3 times is 21. That's about right. So 7 is 17 by 51 centimeters. Again, we're going to do the same thing. Fold it like a letter, brush off if you have a lot excess. Now, if you had this isn't too bad. It's never going to be straight because it's hard to get really straight edge. But what you can do is kind of, if you found it's really not straight across, you can just kind of cut. I'll do it here, like that. And then let's make sure that this is about right. Then you could take this and just kind of fit it right in there and there. So then you get kind of a straight edge. So this looks about right. Again, straighten everything up. This is what we call our second turn. And this is what's building those layers so that when we bake our puff pastry, we're going to get all those beautiful crispy layers of buttery pastry. So that's our second turn. Now, a classic puff needs about 6. The Blitz, you can usually get away with 4 to 5. What we're looking for eventually is to have a really nice smooth dough without any, you can still see the real chunks of butter So we have to keep doing this until it's a nice smooth dough. So again, wrap it up. And again, I'm putting the thyme and a 2, so I know that that's the second turn. It's not too warm, so I think a half hour will do. Again, half an hour to an hour, and then when we come back, we will do our third turn. So we're back. We're going to do, this will be roll and fold number 3. Again, flour your counter, have the seam on this side, the fold, I should say, the fold on that side, flour your counter, the dough, and your rolling pin. Again, your length should be 3 times your width, so ruler. And I like to just soften that up a bit. Every time we do this, it's a little easier to roll. And you can start to see we're getting a much smoother dough, not so much butter showing. Okay. Looks pretty good. As always, you know, keep those edges nice and straight. And when you're rolling, when you've chilled your dough, when you kind of lift it, you shouldn't get a lot of spring back or shrinking. If you are, like if you roll and then you lift it and you're really getting a lot of shrinking, then chill your dough a little longer. That's a sign. The gluten's a little too tight there. So that looks good. As you can see, it's getting quite smooth now. Remember, end to end, you don't want to roll this way, just this way. So again, we're folding this like a letter. And you want to make sure that it's just exactly perfect when you're folding it over, because we want to get those really nice, even layers. That looks good. Even it up. As you can see, it gets a lot faster as we're chilling the dough, and the more we roll it and chill it. So again, same thing. Put it, and then I write on here, this is our third, and the time, and we'll let it chill about a half an hour, and then we'll come back and do our fourth turn. Okay, so we are on number 4. As you can see, this is not like labor intensive. It takes actual time, but most of it's chilling. So you just need to be at home, but you can be off doing other things in between. So again, the fold on your left, flour everything, and roll this way, not side to side. Again, same thing, length 3 times the width. Okay, so again, just run your hand lightly over it, and that way you can tell if it's even thickness. Feels good. Square up your sides here and measure. I'm 7 inches, which is 17 centimeters, so I want to go lengthwise. 21 inches, that's 51 centimeters, which it is. After a while, you can just kind of eyeball it almost. So again, so now, evaluate your dough at this point. This is the 4th turn. If it's smooth, as you can see here, my dough is pretty smooth. I'm going to leave it at 4 turns. If you found there was a lot of really like too much chunks of butter still showing, then again, fold it, chill it, and do 1 more until you get a really nice smooth dough. Like I said, if you were doing like a classic puff, then typically you need 6 turns. So, you know, when they say one of the names for this is quick puff, it's because we don't need as many turns. Some people say that the difference, mainly the difference is you might not get as much puff and as much like layers, flakiness with the Blitz puff pastry as opposed to the classic. Personally, you know, for the difference in work at home, I find I don't really notice, especially if you're just using it for a galette or turnovers. To me, this is the way to go. So again, make sure this meets perfectly. Square up your edges. So we are done. This is just a video on how to make Blitz puff pastry. So at this point, if you wanted to use it today, I would wrap it and chill it for a couple hours. Most of the time what I like to do is let it chill at least overnight, but you know, you can use it after a couple hours. So in the fridge, well wrapped, it will keep about 3 days, or you could freeze it for about 3 months. So this is perfect. You can put it into the freezer whenever you need some puff, take it out. I like to defrost it in the refrigerator overnight. I wrap it in plastic and then I put it in a plastic bag and you're good to go. You have your puff, so whenever you find a recipe that calls for puff, you can use your homemade. So you want to try this. And until next time, I'm Stephanie Jaworski of JoyBaking.com.